Goki Shibukawa is probably one of, if not the most iconic Aikidoka in anime. A regularly recurring Baki character since the mid-90s who's been in hundreds of chapters since the series' inception, Shibukawa is the embodiment of the old martial arts master that uses his wisdom, years, and experience to compensate for his frail, aged body. Even for those not familiar with Shibukawa, he quickly becomes a fan favorite due to his friendly, silly demeanor that hides decades of martial wisdom and a nearly mythical martial arts technique. What separates Shibukawa from most other characters in Baki is his use of soft-style martial arts, or martial arts that don't require much physical strength to use. He uses joint locks, he uses pressure point strikes, he uses unbalancing techniques, he uses small joint manipulation, and of course, his most iconic technique, his signature Aiki. Aikido and other jujutsu-related martial arts styles are very often featured in Japanese manga. They have cultural significance since they're martial arts styles native to Japan, they're widely well known, and help to add a grappling or grappling/striking fighting style to the mix, and it's pretty awesome to see a smaller, weaker-looking character choke out a powerhouse or send a guy 3 times his size flying with the flick of a wrist. Need a sage-old character or an underdog character to stand a chance in a match they appear to have no shot at? Just have him joint lock his opponent, or choke his opponent, or throw him 50 feet away with little effort. This is a classic archetype, and the most famous example in manga is Baki's Aiki. Aiki has been Shibukawa's signature technique since the Maximum Tournament in the 90s, and it's a bit difficult to understand. Shibukawa can either reflect an attack back at an attacker and double the power of the attack reflected, or, if he were to get a grip on someone, he can use Aiki to somehow make the target feel as though they're being burdened by hundreds or thousands of pounds of extra weight, but it's not readily apparent as to how he's actually doing all of this. When reflecting attacks, it appears as though Shibukawa is either striking the attacker's body or even the incoming strike itself at the precise moment of contact so as to cause the force to transfer back into the attacker, or sometimes he'll parry the strike or another part of the body to off-balance the opponent. That tracks, as Aikido, a real-life martial art that revolves around the use of Aiki, does this as well by blending with an attack rather than clashing it force to force, which then allows them to overpower the attacker with their own strength and momentum through the use of internal dynamics and biomechanics. Then we look at the grab, where he seemingly magically increases a person's weight and forces them downward, an ability that's been described by those that have experienced it as leaving them feeling anemic, weak in the legs, and then intensely numb, which then leads to the sensation of being saddled with extreme weight. This can be explained using a keen observation made by Aiki Jr. when he fought Shibukawa the first time. Aiki Jr. says that, unlike European submission wrestling that relies on the opponent's body structure or using joint manipulation, Aiki works by using an opponent's reflexes and reactions against them to throw them. Is that really all there is to it? Or is there more to this technique than there seems? More than meets the eye? Let's see what Shibukawa himself has to say about how Aiki works. In an interview following or preceding the Kyoge fight, Shibukawa describes Aiki as using the inevitable responses and reflexes that everyone has, and that subconsciously activate in response to certain stimuli. That seems to align with what Aiki Jr. said as well, but let's look at Shibukawa's fighting style to see if we can glean any more information or clarity as to what these reactions are and how Shibukawa uses them to throw a person. Shibukawa's martial arts base was the Gentle Way, or Judo, a martial art he learned from an unknown lineage back when he was around 15 years old and mastered to the level of being a national champion. From there he goes on to spend the next 60 years learning and mastering Aiki, and also at some point learning sumo wrestling, and then from all of his martial arts experience, he develops his own personal style of Shibukawa-style jujutsu, but Shibukawa's fighting style in Baki is actually based on the real-life martial art Aikido, specifically Yoshinkan-style Aikido, and even more specifically, his fighting style is based on the fighting style of the founder of Yoshinkan Aikido, the real-life martial arts master whom Shibukawa's character is based on, Master Gozo Shioda. We can clearly see this with Shibukawa's use of body trips in Irimizuki, or striking the opponent in the face or chin as they're moving towards you, which then allows you to use their forward momentum to increase the impact of your strike, either knocking them off their feet or setting them up for a throw by the face downward like spiking a volleyball. Also, it's worth noting that, while I'm unaware of Gozo Shiota having any experience training judo or sumo, Shibukawa still uses techniques from both styles to this day, and even mixes and modifies techniques like how he mixed Dashinage and Aiki and modified the throw from a belt grip to a nostril grip. Let's also examine two other characters in Baki that use Aiki. Pickle, who copied it from Yujiro, and Baki, who presumably copied it from Shibukawa. Pickle was able to master the basics of Aikido, Aiki, without even realizing it, and after only seeing Yujiro use it once. Specifically, while we're unaware as to whether Pickle has mastered Aiki to the degree of being able to create the sensation of added weight, we do see a similar effect when Pickle and Baki are clashing their physical strength, and Pickle diverts Baki's power down and to the side, causing Baki to fall over. This specific example may enlighten us on another example of those unavoidable reflexes that Aiki takes advantage of to throw people and how Aiki does it, but we'll get to that in a bit. Before we do, let's take a look at Baki's use of Aiki. Baki has two notable uses of Aiki in this series, when he uses Yawara against Lee Kaio, and when he subtly uses it against Yujiro in their fight. Against Lee, Baki grabs his left wrist with his left hand and rotates it outward, causing Lee to be thrown to the left, and against Yujiro attempts to strike Baki with an Ippon Ken, but Baki uses his index finger to rotate the strike downward, sweeping Yujiro off of his feet. Interestingly enough, while Pickle's use of Aiki incorporates elements from both of these showings, these are actually two entirely separate uses of Aiki. See, when someone uses Aiki to deflect or redirect a strike, that's a product of physics, biology, and timing. Aiki redirects incoming vectors of force so that the attacker's own momentum carries them into a throw. The idea is that, rather than stopping the attack with force, Aiki users simply guide the path of the attack into a position that makes recovering difficult. Instead of opposing incoming force with a block, the Aiki user blends with the attack using tactics like small angle steps, pivots, and/or body turns at the moment of receiving the attack. Similarly to a shoulder roll, because you're moving with the attack, it decreases the speed at which the strike is moving towards you, and by extension, decreases the force of the impact. The reason being relaxed and limber in Aiki is so important is because of this part of Aiki. It allows the force of the strike to transmit through the tougher skeleton rather than the less durable muscles. When the Aiki user has successfully blended with the attack, the user then employs a circular or diagonal arc to change the direction of the attack. Using a circular or diagonal trajectory change accomplishes two significant things. First, it changes the attack's direction gradually, which allows for the Aiki user to transfer the attack's forward momentum into lateral motion, which is harder to stabilize. And second, it conserves the attack's momentum while only changing the direction, which causes a person to fall or be thrown because their footing doesn't match the new trajectory and causes them to lose balance. The idea is to guide the force along a new path to throw the person with their own attack, but in order to do so effectively, the Aiki users have to use their feet, hips, and spine in tandem to provide a sturdy and efficient channel to guide the force. As for why some of these deflections and parries using Aiki seem to sweep people's legs out from underneath them, despite the connection being at the hand or wrist, is because torque travels through the arms into the torso or legs, so a small movement at the wrist can cause a massive ripple throughout the opponent's body and change the whole position of their stance. Now, obviously if someone tries only what I've explained so far, it would maybe work to minimal effect, but not nearly to the extent as we see in Baki. The trick there is timing. The key is to redirect the attack right before or at the exact moment at which the force of the attack is at its highest. It's a heck of a lot harder to correct your center of mass when your body is already committed to a certain movement or trajectory. When a punch is in motion but hasn't fully extended yet, that's when you strike. Rotate the punch inward or outward, and let their momentum do the rest. When a kick is moving forward after being chambered, sidestep, pivot, and scoop the heel of the foot. That's Aiki. If you time it well enough, their commitment to the attack and muscle activation to brace for the expected movement will be their biggest weakness. That kinda leads into those inevitable responses Shibukawa spoke of. Aiki's secret is that, unlike other grappling martial arts techniques, it relies on proprioception, or the body's sense of position, movement, and location in space, which is what allows for coordinated movement and balance without conscious thought. Things like joint manipulation or just general random shifts in load can trigger reflexes that relax opposing muscles, literally making attackers unable to resist a technique or replant their feet. These reactions that Shibukawa speaks of, that Aiki is so reliant on, are called autogenic inhibitions, or neuromuscular reflexes triggered by the activation of Golgi tendon organs that cause the same muscles being stimulated to relax. The biological function is a protective reflex to reduce contraction to allow for a muscle to stretch further, but Aiki takes advantage of it because it prevents targets from being able to resist a technique. Add to that Aiki also uses pain and joint manipulation to cause the target's nervous system to withdraw against a technique, and that's why it seems like Aiki can be used to effortlessly ragdoll a person across a room. It's because Aiki takes advantage of multiple built-in biological processes that can't consciously be resisted. In practical outcome, due to a use of leverage and timing, Aiki uses the attacker's momentum to throw them rather than muscle. That's specifically for the redirection though. For that strange grab that makes the target feel numb and then encumbered with weight, there's a bit more to it. First, they subtly shift your center of mass so that, though you don't realize it, your feet are no longer directly below you supporting your weight. Then, by using a kinetic chain from the user's shoulder, to their elbow, to their wrist, to their hand, to the attacker's hand, wrist, elbow, and shoulder, Aiki can use a small twist to transmit torque through the body and force the hips and knees into a mechanically weak position, like supporting your weight with your toes instead of your more stable foot, or like locking or rotating your knees, which allows the Aiki user to prevent the target from generating the force needed to stabilize themselves. From there, we go back to those reflexes Shibukawa mentioned. Your sense of balance relies on fast feedback from your muscle spindles, your Golgi tendon organs, your joints and skin receptors, and your vestibular system. A sudden unexpected high-tension signal triggers those protective reflexes, and that's how Aiki throws people. For example, if someone put a strong tension on a Golgi tendon organ, it would provoke the autogenic inhibition I mentioned earlier, and the muscle would relax instinctively in an attempt to prevent damage. Pain can also trigger reflexive muscle shutdowns like what we see when Shibukawa uses the finger grab against Ali Jr. Damage to the joints can cause your quads, hamstrings, and ankle muscles to shut down long enough for the target's body to collapse. If you watch people use Aiki against opponents in real life, they kinda just turn and twist with the technique and then collapse, and the reason for that is nociceptive force compliance. They aren't doing that consciously or on purpose, they aren't just giving up. The pain they feel from the Aiki technique is causing their nervous system to stop resisting in order to prevent joint injury, which also then in turn can short-circuit the target, causing their legs to give out. Due to the footwork involved in Aiki techniques, as well as the turning of the hips and the shifting of the target's weight in a coordinated application, the attacker's momentum is shifted, and now their whole body is offloading its own force in a way that their balance can't handle, and because they can't compensate for the force, it allows for them to be thrown easily without much force of your own. To give you an example that might be easier to conceptualize, imagine someone is rotating your wrist outward while simultaneously stepping slightly off to the side and pulling your wrist towards them. Your weight is being pulled forward and moved to the side, and because your knees are likely straight, you wouldn't be able to recover and you'd fall. In real life, taking steps like widening your stance, lowering your center of gravity, keeping your weight distributed to the balls of your feet, turning your shoulder in the direction of a wrist lock to allow for a release of tension on the wrist, and using footwork to prevent pressure on joints instead of trying to rigidly resist the technique are all things you can do to resist Aiki, but in Baki, they take it a step further and we're told about 3 more weaknesses. First, Aiki can't defend against biting because bites don't have any momentum to shift the trajectory of and clamp like a vice, creating force from 2 opposing directions that can't be redirected. Then we have Jack's special anti-Aiki technique that he developed to defeat Shibukawa. Aiki works by redirecting an opponent's attack back at them, doubling said force, and adding the user's own force to the redirected attack, but if the attacker moves slowly, carefully, and cautiously, there won't be enough force or momentum to effectively redirect. Pressure on joints and GTOs would still be effective, but that aspect of Aiki, the numbing weight part, requires a grip, which was considerably dangerous against Jack because of his biting. Finally, it is possible to counter Aiki with Aiki or by rolling through the attack, but in that case, you'd still be reacting to and defending against Aiki rather than preventing it like Jack did in both prior examples. I think I actually understand Aiki even better now after doing this video, and hopefully it helps you guys to understand too, because it's definitely one of the more misunderstood martial arts concepts in modern time. People are incredibly reductive and dismissive when it comes to anything that has anything to do with Aikido or the mechanics of techniques in Baki, so as you can imagine, most morons dismiss Aiki, a mechanics-heavy Aikido technique in Baki, as magic or bullshido, rather than admitting that they just don't understand it. So the next time someone on the Baki subreddit asks how Aiki works for the 4,000th time, hopefully now you can give them a clarifying answer. Thank you all so much for watching, and special thanks to Henry Nugent for suggesting this video. Techniques like Aiki that are cryptically explained in Baki, vaguely explained, or just very hard to understand in general are always my favorite techniques to explain in these videos because I feel like I'm actually helping fellow Baki readers to understand the series, and contributing to the community by helping to better clarify not only the interesting techniques included in Baki, but the awesome ways Itagaki is able to implement them because of his deep understanding of them. Alright, if this video gets 150 likes within a week of uploading, the very next video is going to be a combat clarification on the 0-inch thunderclap from the Baki Gaiden Yuenchi, a technique I've gotten about a dozen requests to explain, so I'm sure you guys are going to be excited for that. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.